Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are undertaking a really critical mission. We're talking about turning your website from something that just, works into a high-performance, maybe even a revenue-generating machine. Most of us, developers and businesses, we stop once the site is functional.
That's right.
Our mission today, based on this whole stack of coaching guides we've synthesized, is to move you from working to wow. And we're going to do it with one incredibly powerful resource, free AI tools.
And that is such a crucial distinction to make. The launch is never, ever the finish line in modern web development.
Never.
The sources just kept hammering this point home. Optimization and testing are continuous. They're habits. A truly great website, it isn't done when it loads. It's done when it loads fast, when it delights every single user, no matter their device or their ability, and crucially, when it never, ever confuses anyone.
Absolutely. And if you've ever felt, completely overwhelmed by one of those technical audit reports, or if you've thought optimization was something reserved for like huge tech teams with these massive budgets, then this deep dive is for you. We are going to cut right through that complexity. We're going to find the highest leverage shortcuts, the things you can do in an hour that might give you a 50% improvement. And we're focusing specifically on performance, accessibility, and responsiveness.
And we're doing it all without writing a single check. This whole deep dive is designed to equip you with both the mindset and the practical toolkit. So by the time we wrap up, you will have achieved three really concrete things.
Okay.
First, you'll grasp why continuous testing and optimization is a business strategy, not just some technical checklist. Second, you'll master the specific free AI tools from Lighthouse to ChatGPT to diagnose and fix errors.
And the third?
And third, you'll learn how to embed that habit of continuous improvement into your weekly workflow. You're basically future-proofing your entire digital presence.
Let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's unpack this concept of continuous testing. We all kind of know, instinctively, that websites change, code changes, users change. But why isn't testing just, that final QA step before you go live? Why do all these coaching materials insist on this relentless repetition?
Well, the sources really emphasize that testing is how your code, your content, and your design prove they can handle the real world, unpredictable conditions.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. A user might hit your site on an old smartphone with like a weak 4G connection while they're standing in the sun.
Right, the glare is terrible, they can't see a thing.
Exactly. That environment is hostile. So the coach's #1 tip is, don't test once, test often. Small continuous improvements act like preventative medicine.
So you're preventing that big failure down the line.
You're preventing a catastrophic failure, like a broken checkout flow or a massive security vulnerability. Constant vigilance is just the most affordable form of risk management. At the end of the day, that's what it is.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so if we accept that we have to test constantly, where on earth do we start? A website feels like a million moving parts, databases, APIs, front-end code, images. How do we simplify the focus?
The foundation lies in what we're calling the quality triangle. The sources really simplify all that chaos by defining these three golden, non-negotiable areas that, ultimately dictate a site's success or failure. Performance, accessibility, and responsiveness. They're interdependent pillars. If you compromise on one, you weaken the entire structure. Doesn't matter how beautiful your design is.
Okay, let's dedicate some time to defining each one of those pillars. Let's start with performance. Everyone talks about speed, but what are we actually measuring here?
Performance is absolutely centered on speed, which translates directly to load time and rendering speed.
Okay.
We're checking core metrics like, you'll hear this acronym LCP, which is largest contentful paint.
Yay.
That measures when the main content of your page has loaded. And another one is FID, or first input delay, which assesses how quickly the site responds when a user first interacts with it, like a tap or a click.
And why does this matter so much?
Because the research is just brutal on this. Slow sites don't just annoy visitors, they actively drive them away. For every single second of delay, conversion rates can drop by over 7%.
Wow.
Zero tolerance for lag is the modern user's default setting.
It's not just impatience, though, is it? It's about trust. A slow site feels broken. And if the site feels broken, the business behind it feels untrustworthy.
That's it, exactly. Now let's move to that second pillar, accessibility.
Okay.
Historically, a lot of companies viewed this as like a compliance burden, something you had to do by law, or just a feel-good measure.
Right, a box to tick.
Yeah. But the modern perspective, which is heavily promoted in our sources, is that accessibility is profound growth strategy.
Okay, explain that. How is it a growth strategy?
Well, accessibility just means ensuring that every single person can use your site, regardless of their age, language, or ability. This includes users with visual impairments using screen readers, or users with motor impairments who rely on keyboards, or even just users in difficult viewing conditions.
Hmm.
By ensuring your design is inclusive, using high contrast, providing accurate alt text for images, structuring content logically, you are actively expanding your total addressable market.
That's a great way to put it.
If 20% of the population has some form of disability, ignoring accessibility means you're willfully excluding 20% of your potential customers. It's a massive business opportunity disguised as a technical requirement.
And finally, responsiveness.
Yep.
As developers, I feel like we sometimes assume this problem is solved.
We do.
Modern frameworks handle it pretty well, but the sheer complexity of devices means it's still a golden area for testing.
It absolutely is. Responsiveness confirms that your site maintains its integrity, its content hierarchy, its usability across all possible devices, screen sizes, and orientations.
And it's still critical because
Global traffic stats show the vast majority of web users consume content and they transact on mobile devices.
Right.
They might start on a phone and then move to a desktop later. If your site doesn't gracefully adapt to a vertical mobile screen, you are failing your primary audience segment.
So things like tiny fonts or buttons that are too close together.
Exactly. A small font size, a button that's too close to another button, a massive image that cuts off the content. These are all failures of responsiveness that lead directly to user abandonment.
So if I'm visualizing this quality triangle, performance is the engine,
Yep.
accessibility is the ramp that makes sure everyone can get in the building,
Mm-hmm.
and responsiveness is like the adaptive suspension system that can handle any road condition. They all have to work together.
That is the perfect synthesis. So now that we understand why these three pillars are so necessary, let's get practical. Let's tackle that first pillar, performance, by harnessing the power of these free AI tools.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because traditional web performance audits, they used to cost a fortune. You needed specialized expertise.
For sure.
But now we have this whole stack of free AI and machine learning-backed tools that just democratize speed optimization. So where do we start building this toolkit?
We begin with the diagnostic power of Google, which provides the two non-negotiable tools for anyone who's serious about performance.
First up, Google Lighthouse.
Lighthouse. It's a powerful open source tool built directly into the Chrome DevTools. Its advantage is how comprehensive it is. It runs these detailed audits covering not just performance scores, but also SEO, best practices, and accessibility. It gives you immediate granular feedback right where you're already working and debugging. It's the foundational test.
And then there's its sibling, PageSpeed Insights.
PageSpeed Insights is crucial because it takes that Lighthouse data and synthesizes it for a broader context. Specifically, it gives you separate, quantified performance scores for mobile versus desktop.
And that difference can be huge.
Oh, it's massive. Your desktop site running on a fiber connection might score a 98 out of 100, but your mobile score might just tank to 55 because of large images or slow-to-load third-party scripts. PageSpeed Insights highlights that critical mobile weakness instantly.
The reports from these tools, though, they can be intensely jargon-heavy.
Yeah.
They throw terms at you like time to interactive or first contentful paint. This is where the large language models come in, right?
Absolutely. The role of generative AI, your ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, it's not to run the test, but to be your expert translator and your project manager.
So it translates the gobbledygook.
Exactly. Time to interactive, or TTI, is just how long it takes for a page to become fully interactive so the user can click buttons and type in fields. First contentful paint, FCP, is just how long it takes for the very first pixel of content to appear. If those terms are confusing, you feed that raw technical report to the AI and you just ask for clarity. It turns impenetrable jargon into actionable English.
And we can't forget the simplest, but maybe the most frequent performance killer, images. What free tools do the sources recommend for that?
Image optimization has to be step zero. Before you touch a line of code, look at your media. Tools like TinyPNG or Google's own Squoosh are incredibly effective. They're free, drag-and-drop tools that use smart compression algorithms.
And the size reduction is significant.
You can reduce the file size of your JPEGs and PNGs by 50% or more. often without any perceptible loss of quality. Imagine saving half a megabyte on every single product photo. That speed saving adds up incredibly fast across a dozen pages.
That initial analysis and optimization is so key. Let's talk about using AI to cut through that jargon, because the sources gave this really immediate, actionable prompt that just eliminates what they call analysis paralysis.
This is maybe the most valuable takeaway from this whole section. When you get that overwhelming Lighthouse report, don't try to decipher every single line.
Yep.
Instead, you copy the key findings and you feed them to your AI with this specific command. Summarize my Lighthouse report, explain why the score is low, and list the 3 quick fixes that will offer the highest performance gain.
And that forces the AI to prioritize.
It forces prioritization. It turns a sprawling technical document into a 3-item development ticket. It saves hours of research.
That is genuinely transformative. So once we know what to fix, the sources also lay out this clear 5-step action plan for getting those lightning-fast loading speeds. This is the blueprint.
Right, and we can break those down. As we said, the lowest hanging fruit, step 1, is compress images. We use tools like TinyPNG, but it's also important to adopt modern formats like WebP, which offers just superior compression. This step alone can move a failing site into the acceptable range.
Okay, what's step 2? That one deals with the code itself, right?
Step 2 is minify code. When developers write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, we use spaces, line breaks, comments, all for readability.
Right, for other humans.
For other humans, the browser doesn't need any of that. Minification is just the process of stripping away every unnecessary character to reduce the file size of your code bundles. A large JavaScript file might shrink by 10 or 20% just through minification.
And what if I don't know how to run a minifier program?
That's the beauty of the AI assistant. You take your raw code and you just prompt it. Minify my HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files for production and ensure the functionality remains the same. The AI handles all that detailed, repetitive work instantly.
Step 3 sounds crucial for content-rich sites, like blogs or e-commerce pages, with tons of visuals below the fold.
That's use lazy loading. This is all about the initial burden on the user's browser. Instead of forcing the browser to download every single image on the page the moment it starts loading.
Even the ones way at the bottom.
Even those images 5 scrolls down, lazy loading only starts the download when the user scrolls close enough to bring it into the viewport. The initial page payload is drastically reduced. You get faster perceived load times and a much better time to interactive score.
Okay, so steps 4 and 5. These are more about how the user's browser talks to our servers. Let's talk about caching static files.
Step 4, cache static files. This is a fundamental optimization technique. By setting specific browser cache headers, you're telling the user's browser to store static files like your site's logo, the main CSS files, key JavaScript libraries locally on their device for a set period, maybe 30 days.
And the result of that is huge for return visitors, I'm guessing.
It's profound. When the user comes back to your site within that window, those core elements are already saved locally. Their browser doesn't have to request them from your server again. Subsequent page loads feel almost instantaneous. It's a huge win.
And finally, step 5, which is an infrastructural choice. Host smartly.
This really means understanding the concept of a content delivery network, or CDN. Traditional hosting serves your site from one central server. If that server is in New York and your user is in Sydney, the data has to travel halfway around the world. That creates latency. CDN-based hosts like Vercel or Netlify, they distribute copies of your static website files across multiple geographically diverse servers. They call them points of presence, or POPs.
So the user in Sydney is actually accessing a server that's much closer, maybe in Singapore or something.
Exactly. The content is served from the server closest to the user. It dramatically reduces that travel time, that latency. For a global audience, moving to a CDN is probably the most effective infrastructural change you can make for speed.
It's all about lightening the load for maximum velocity, like a rocket.
That's the idea. The images, the code, the database calls, get it as light as possible for launch.
That detail really clarifies why those 5 steps are prioritized. You're addressing every single stage of the loading process. Okay, we've established that speed is essential. But if that lightning-fast site is only usable by a fraction of the population, we've still failed the user experience.
Absolutely.
So we need to transition out of the other 2 pillars of that quality triangle, accessibility and responsiveness. Let's start with designing for everyone.
This is where we really elevate the standard from just, it works, to genuine user care. Accessibility is about designing for the full spectrum of human experience.
Hmm.
It's recognizing that users might be visually impaired, colorblind, using a screen reader, navigating only with a keyboard, or maybe dealing with cognitive overload. The goal is parity of experience. Everyone gets a good experience.
So what are the core measurable guidelines that the sources really insist upon?
There are four critical areas that lead to the most common accessibility failures. First, and this is the easiest to audit, is text contrast must be greater than or equal to 4.5 to 1.
And that's a specific ratio.
It's a specific ratio defined by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. If the contrast is too low, like light gray text on a white background, it's fundamentally unreadable for users with low vision, or even for anyone trying to view the site in harsh sunlight. It's a quick fix with immediate returns.
Okay, what about images? They're everywhere on the web.
Second, alt text is required for all meaningful images. This is absolutely vital for users who rely on screen readers. The screen reader can't see the image, it reads the alt text aloud.
So it's a description.
It has to be a succinct description. If you have a chart, the alt text must describe the data. If it's a photo of a product, it has to describe the product. And if the image is purely decorative, the alt text should be empty so the screen reader doesn't just clutter the experience.
What about interactive elements like forms, sign-up forms, checkout fields?
Third, labels must be used clearly for all form fields. This seems so basic, but in modern design, developers often hide the label tag for a cleaner look, and they replace it with placeholder text inside the field.
Right, I see that all the time.
It's an accessibility violation. Screen readers need a dedicated permanent label associated with that input field so the user knows exactly what they are entering. Name, email, password, even after the placeholder text disappears when they click into it.
And the final one. This is critical for users who can't use a mouse or a trackpad.
That is ensuring the site must allow for keyboard navigation. A user has to be able to navigate every single interactive element, every link, button, menu item, form field, using only the tab key to cycle through and the enter key to activate.
Okay.
If your site requires a mouse for any function, it is failing this standard. You also have to make sure that the focus state, that glowing outline around the element you've tapped to, is visually distinct and obvious.
How can a listener quickly audit their site for these issues without buying expensive software?
The sources highly recommend two free auditing tools. The first is wave.webaim.org. You just paste in your URL, and the tool crawls the page and generates this immediate visual overlay that flags every accessibility error. Contrast failures, missing alt text, everything.
And the second?
The second is an accessibility checker, which does a very similar thing. Using these tools is the difference between guessing about compliance and knowing exactly where your users are struggling.
Okay, let's pivot to responsiveness. If accessibility is about designing for diverse human abilities, responsiveness is designing for the vast, diverse ecosystem of devices.
Exactly. We defined it as the site adapting like water. It changes its container, but the content and flow remain intuitive. The core concept relies on CSS techniques like fluid grids and media queries, flexbox, grid layouts. But even with these tools, design errors creep in.
So what are the practical testing steps we should be doing?
The steps are surprisingly simple. Step 1 is the most primitive, but it's really effective. Manually resizing the browser window.
Just drag in the corner.
Just grab the corner of your desktop browser and drag it inward slowly.
Yeah.
You should see smooth, predictable layout shifts, not abrupt breaks or, and this is the big one, horizontal scroll bars appearing. A horizontal scroll bar on a website is the universal sign of a responsiveness failure.
Okay, step 2 is about emulating specific devices.
Right. You use Chrome DevTools and the Toggle Device toolbar. This is the gold standard. It lets you select specific breakpoints like an iPhone SE or an iPad Pro and instantly see how your CSS renders on that screen size and resolution. You can even simulate touch events and change network throttling to see how it performs on a slow mobile connection.
And if we spot a problem, say a sidebar widget suddenly overlaps the main text, how does AI become our diagnostic partner here?
Responsiveness breaks are almost always related to conflicting CSS rules. Maybe a static pixel width was used instead of a fluid percentage, or a media query wasn't applied correctly. So instead of digging through hundreds of lines of style sheet, you can take the offending section of CSS and ask your AI. I'm seeing an overlap issue when the screen width drops below 768 pixels. Which parts of my CSS are responsible and currently not responsive? The AI will immediately point you to the problem, saving a ton of time.
It seems like both accessibility and responsiveness really boil down to one core philosophy, which is expansion. They both expand your potential audience, and they demonstrate a high level of care for the user experience.
Precisely. A site that passes all these checks isn't just technically sound, it's fundamentally more trustworthy. So we've covered technical audits and code standards pretty extensively, which is essential. But the sources keep reminding us of a fundamental truth. Perfect code does not equal a perfect user experience. Nothing can replace real-world human feedback.
And this brings us to user experience testing, or UX testing. It sounds like something only huge corporations can afford, but the sources offer this simple, really effective hack. Just test with your friends.
It is the most accessible form of quality assurance. The goal is to set up a controlled environment where you invite 2 or 3 people, ideally people who fit your target demographic but have never seen the site before, to use it while you just observe them.
And you're not asking for their opinions, you're giving them tasks.
Exactly. The tasks have to be actionable and simulate real user goals. Don't say explore the site. Say find the return policy, save the blue widget to your favorites, and then try to check out as a guest. You watch for hesitation, for confusion, any moments where they abandon the task, those moments are gold.
So what are the key questions we ask them after they've done these tasks?
The sources suggest focusing on 3 specific points because they cover the crucial facets of UX. First, what confused you? This points directly to design flaws and flow issues. Second, what did you like? This tells you what to keep and maybe even amplify. And third, what would you change? This generates new feature ideas.
The real genius, though, is in the AI synthesis step. We're not just left with a bunch of raw, subjective notes.
Correct. Qualitative data, especially from casual user testing, is often really messy and subjective. So you take those verbatim notes, or even better, a transcribed recording of the session, and you feed that raw input to ChatGPT with this prompt. Here is the raw feedback from 3 user testers. Summarize their points, cross-reference similar confusion points, and list the top 5 actionable improvements prioritized by the severity of the user struggle.
And that immediately transforms this unstructured opinion into a clear, prioritized development backlog. It's the difference between a brainstorming session and an actual project plan.
And this reinforces that core insight from the coaching materials. Real people are better than perfect code. Human feedback reveals behavioral mismatches. Your perfect code might have a button labeled Submit Order, but if every user instinctively looks for a button labeled Complete Purchase, your code is technically correct but experientially flawed.
Right. An automated test will never, ever catch that nuance.
Never. Only humans can.
So once we've addressed that qualitative human side, the sources guide us toward the quantitative automated testing for beginners. Automation sounds incredibly complex, like writing extensive script libraries. But we can start small with AI assistance.
Automation is scalable. For a beginner, the easiest entry point is using AI-integrated development environments. We're looking at tools like Replit AI tests. Replit is a collaborative coding platform, and it has these integrated AI features that let beginners write simple unit tests for basic functions within their code.
What kind of basic functions are we talking about here?
We're talking about core logic. Does this function correctly calculate the sales tax? Does the login form successfully reject an empty password? Does the data correctly save to a variable? Replit AI can generate simple test cases for these small critical code blocks, and it runs them automatically every time you make a change, just ensuring that basic logic never breaks.
And then there's the classic headache of checking compatibility across different browsers and devices, cross-browser testing.
Cross-browser testing is notoriously painful. Maintaining a library of physical devices is expensive and it's time-consuming. That's where cloud-based services like BrowserStack or LambdaTest come in.
And they have free options.
They often have free tiers or trial periods that provide enough capacity for a beginner to check crucial compatibility across the major platforms, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, and ensure responsiveness is consistent on a few key mobile devices. You're just verifying that your site isn't completely broken on, say, an obscure version of Safari.
And for those who are moving into more serious development, the intermediate step involves integrating continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD. We should clarify what that pipeline is and why it matters.
The intermediate step is integrating GitHub Actions with Copilot. CI/CD stands for Continuous Integration, Continuous Deployment. It's the professional habit of automating your testing in your deployment. When you push new code, that's the integration part, an automated pipeline is triggered. This pipeline runs all your tests, unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests immediately. And if they pass, the code is automatically deployed. That's the deployment part.
And why is that so critical for optimization?
Because it ensures you never braid a working site. If you push new code that speeds up the homepage, but you accidentally break the checkout button, a regression error, the CI system catches that failure before the code ever reaches the live server. And Copilot helps by quickly writing the boilerplate test scripts you need for GitHub Actions, which really lowers the barrier to entry.
So it turns testing from a manual chore into an automated safety net.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So we've connected the human feedback, the macro-level UX, with the automated feedback, the micro-level code structure. The final piece is diagnosing the problems that will inevitably happen. So what does this all mean when the inevitable happens? You're staring at an error message that makes no sense at 2 in the morning.
We've all been there.
Your performance score suddenly tanks. A user reports a bug. How does AI switch from being a consultant to being a precise emergency diagnostic partner?
AI is just unparalleled at connecting symptoms to highly technical root causes, especially when you give it the relevant code or the console output. We've synthesized a detailed guide covering the most common, frustrating symptoms, their causes, and the exact AI prompts you need to solve them. This is your practical break glass in case of emergency toolkit.
Okay, let's start with the most common and frustrating bug. A button that does nothing. The user clicks and nothing happens.
Symptom 1, button not working. The likely cause is almost always a JavaScript event error. The code that says, when this is clicked, do this function is either misspelled, misplaced, or the function it's calling is failing.
So how do you prompt the AI?
You need to force it to diagnose the event handler. You say, here is my button element and the associated JavaScript function. Explain precisely why my button click event is being ignored, and provide the corrected code to attach the event listener. This forces the AI to look at event handlers and scopes and isolate the problem. It's usually a typo or a script loading issue.
Next up, a classic visual bug that just destroys responsive design. Overlapping elements.
Symptom 2, text overlaps an image or another element. The fundamental cause here is a CSS layer issue, often revolving around the z-index property.
Z-index.
Yeah. Think of your website as a stack of papers on a desk. Z-index dictates the stacking order. If one element have a high z-index and a conflicting position property, it can overlap others.
So the fix is?
You tell the AI, I have text overlapping an image in the mobile view. Fix the CSS z-index and layout overlap for this element, ensuring the text remains legible. The AI will typically adjust the z-index value or suggest using flexbox gaps to prevent that collision.
We talked about speed. But what if a previously fast page suddenly slows down? What's the rapid diagnosis for that?
Symptom 3. Sudden, significant page slowdown. If it's not a massive image that just got uploaded, it's often a poor asset loading strategy that's been recently introduced. Maybe a heavy third-party tracking script was added, or an unoptimized font file is blocking the rendering.
Okay, so the prompt would be?
It needs to be specific.
Yeah.
My PageSpeed Insights score dropped 30 points overnight. Analyze this Lighthouse report and outline the optimal strategy for loading third-party scripts and optimizing initial asset loading. This shifts the focus from simple compression to the technical strategy of when assets load, which often leads to suggestions like deferring non-critical JavaScript.
And finally, a really frustrating integration issue. The form looks fine, the user hits submit, but the data never reaches the server.
Symptom 4, form data missing. The likely cause here is an API network error, which could be a bunch of things. An incorrect API path, bad data formatting, or critically, a cross-origin resource sharing issue. Chorus.
Right, Chorus is a browser security thing, right?
It's a security mechanism. It prevents web pages from making requests to a different domain unless that server explicitly allows it. So your prompt needs to be specific to network request. I am getting a fetch ppost error in the console. Diagnose this error, paying attention to the request headers and potential course issues, and provide the fix for the client-side fetch request. The AI is great at spotting that missing header that's blocking the data transfer.
This level of detail turns AI into an indispensable debugging assistant. And the reminder from the coaches about mindset here is really crucial.
Absolutely. The encouragement is simple but powerful. AI never gets tired of your questions.
Right.
So ask until you fully understand the fix. When you're dealing with technical frustration, having a resource with infinite patience that will explain z-index or course for the 10th time is just invaluable.
Let's ground all these concepts in reality by revisiting that case study of Miriam's website makeover. This clearly illustrates the financial return on investment of following these steps.
Right. So Miriam ran a thriving but small online handicraft business. Her site was visually appealing, lots of high-resolution images of her products. But when she ran a Google Lighthouse test, Her performance score was a disastrous 48 out of 100.
Ouch.
Yeah. The site took way too long to load, especially on mobile, and that was severely impacting her potential customers.
So she took the core advice from the coaching guide and she sought out AI assistance.
Correct. She fed her low score and that technical report to ChatGPT and asked for a prioritized plan. The AI immediately identified the major culprits: uncompressed images and bloated CSS. It gave her the exact implementation steps: compress all images, minify the main CSS file, and implement lazy loading for her product galleries.
And what was the measurable outcome after she dedicated time to these AI-guided fixes?
After roughly 2 hours of implementation guided entirely by free tools and the AI translator Merriam reran the test, her Lighthouse score jumped from a failing 48 to an excellent 92 out of 100.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
But here's the key result, the punchline that underscores the value of this entire deep dive. Her sales doubled the very next week.
Doubled. That's a staggering immediate return on 2 hours of work. It just demonstrates that performance isn't just a technical metric. It is a direct driver of conversion and revenue.
The takeaway from Merriam's story is this: every millisecond you shave off a load time reduces friction and adds credibility to your brand. Speed equals trust, and trust equals revenue. Optimization is a business strategy, not a chore. So we've optimized, we've debugged, and we've tested. And the temptation is to lean back and declare victory.
Right, I'm done.
I'm done. But as the sources persistently remind us, great developers never say that. The site is a living entity, and optimization doesn't just end at launch. It has to transform into a continuous, self-sustaining cycle.
We're adopting the professional habit here.
Right.
I have to visualize the work not as a straight path to a finish line, but as a loop.
Precisely. The sources define this as the continuous improvement cycle. It's a perpetual 4-stage loop. First, you plan the next feature or content update based on your analytics. Second, you build or implement those changes.
Okay.
Third, you test the results using the free tools we've discussed: Lighthouse, Wave.WebAIM, UX testing. And finally, you improve based on the results of that testing. And then the arrow immediately loops right back to plan, ensuring complacency never sets in.
That loop requires discipline. To make it manageable and actionable for our listener, the source material suggests establishing a simple, repeatable routine, a weekly checklist that keeps those critical scores consistently high.
Consistency is so much more effective than sporadic, intense bursts of activity. This weekly checklist ensures the foundational elements of that quality triangle are never neglected.
So what's on that checklist?
Okay, first, test speed and accessibility. Always. Make running Lighthouses and Wave.WebAIM checks non-negotiable every Monday morning. If your scores are below 90, prioritize fixes immediately.
Simple enough.
Second, check mobile experience. Since device updates are constant, regularly use the Chrome Div tools to confirm your top 3 traffic driving devices are still rendering flawlessly. Third, update outdated content. This serves 2 purposes: keeps your site relevant for users and signals to search engines that your site is actively maintained, which helps SEO.
And the last one.
And finally, review analytics and feedback. Connect the technical scores back to real-world user behavior. Look for pages with high bounce rates or where users drop off in the funnel, and cross-reference that with the UX feedback you've gathered.
That routine takes this massive, overwhelming concept of continuous improvement and just condenses it into 4 manageable, high-leverage bullet points. It's an exercise in focus consistency.
And this routine is really underpinned by a concluding philosophy, a final piece of wisdom that summarizes this entire deep dive. Testing is not criticism, it's care. When you find a bug or a low score, it is not an indictment of your code. It is an opportunity to improve the user experience. You test what you love because you want it to last, you want it to succeed, and you want it to serve your audience effectively for the long term. That shift in perspective from dreading tests to embracing them as a form of care, that is the ultimate professional habit.
This has been a deeply practical and, I think, extensive deep dive into maximizing your website's potential using nothing but professional habits and free AI resources.
We've established the critical definitions. Testing is ensuring functionality everywhere, while optimization is making that experience faster and smoother. And we detailed the importance of the quality triangle: performance, accessibility, and responsiveness as the foundation for success.
And that essential free AI toolbox we assembled today gives you diagnostic power with Lighthouse and PageSpeed Insights, intelligence with ChatGPT for translation and prioritization, and even automation capabilities with Replit AI and GitHub Actions.
In synthesis, we've really proven that testing and optimization turn a good website into a trustworthy, high-converting asset. Ignoring these steps is just leaving money and user loyalty on the table.
So we want to leave you with a final reflection, tying back to those immediate, tangible results achieved by Miriam. We encourage you to move directly into the practice zone.
Your task, derived from today's deep dive, is this. Run a Lighthouse test on your most crucial landing page right now. Take the resulting data, ask an AI for 3 clear, actionable fixes, and then implement 2 of those fixes, prioritizing image compression and code minification.
And then ask yourself this provocative question, based on the real-world results we explored. If Miriam doubled her sales by improving her performance score from 48 to 92 in just 2 hours of AI-guided work, what hidden revenue potential is locked up in your site's current performance score, just waiting for you to unlock it with these free tools?
That potential is immediate and it's accessible. Go find it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time, we move beyond optimization and discuss the final steps of successfully launching your perfected project to the world and monitoring its performance for continued exponential growth.